Hello, it's a pleasure to meet you. My name is David Blank-Edelman. I am a SRE Academy Program Lead. I'm from Microsoft, so this talk is not representing Microsoft per se. I'm not selling you any Microsoft. If you want to, we can talk about Windows during the question and answer section or something, if that's what you desire. But I thought it would be good, since one of the things that I do a lot is help people do public speaking. And so I wanted to start off by giving you a few of my tips, top 10 tips for successful public speaking. The first one is insult the audience, which is what I may have done with this title. But I'm hoping that you understand that when I say that, I don't mean like you personally, I mean you collectively, and that I'm using these questions as a way of opening different doors for you. I'm hoping to have a conversation. With these lights, it's a little bit of an interrogation, but I'm hoping to have a conversation with you. Feel free to argue with me. For sure, I'm going to be engaging you. If you're the type of person that likes to look at your laptop, I may just come off these steps independent of this powered field here, and just come visit you. So I'm hoping that you'll join me in this. So let's talk a little bit about questions first. I think it's really important in this world that we have a little bit more poetry. So I just want to start this talk with a letter that was written by the poet Rilke that I like very much. And he wrote, "I'd like to beg you, dear sir, as well as I can, to have patience with everything unresolved in your heart, and to try to love the questions themselves as if they were locked rooms or books written in a very foreign language. Don't search for the answers which could not be given to you now because you would not be able to live them." And the point is to live everything. Live the questions now. Perhaps then, someday far in the future, you will gradually, without even noticing it, live your way into the answer. And that's why we're in the land of questions for this particular talk. Isn't Rilke awesome? Okay, so I have 7 questions for you, and then you'll be able to ask me questions if you want. The first question I want to start with is this one right here. I want to get you warmed up. Are you ready to be warmed up, right? What we're gonna do? Yes, good, okay, great. So let's talk a little bit about reliability, right? It's in the middle of the talk, might as well talk about it, might get there. What I just wanna do first is open up your understanding of reliability a little bit more as we start to get into these questions. So the thing is when people think about reliability, most of the time they're thinking about availability. Is it up or is it down, right? And in fact, as an SRE or somebody who's working in reliability, you're probably gonna spend most of your time there, just straight up. But it's not the only thing to be paying attention to, right? The other possibilities, the other expectations that you're trying to meet as part of doing reliability work is you might care about latency. So, right, like, because you know that slow is the new down, right? And so it's really important to understand that that's important. Or maybe you're working on pipeline systems, right? And you have to care about throughput. Or maybe you're talking about batch systems, right? And you care about how much coverage did I do over the data I have to do. Or correctness is something we don't very often measure that we should. Or, and this one's a little fun. Fidelity is, okay, so here's the best example. You know, I'm sure everybody in this room, that Netflix runs millions upon millions of microservices, right? And that when you go to the Netflix homepage, as many of you probably do, and you see that it's a bunch of sections, maybe it's some recommendations, maybe it's here's the newest thing, here's what's going on in your latest area, et cetera. You know if, for example, the recommendation engine goes down, that next time somebody goes to Netflix's homepage, they don't say, sorry, no movies today, you know, this part is down, right? Instead, they serve you the page in a degraded state, right? They take away that piece, they replace it with something else. And so that's fidelity. Like, how often am I giving you the full experience, right? And sometimes that's important to measure. If you're dealing with sports cars or election results, maybe you care about freshness, right? And then there's durability. If you're running any sort of storage system, and maybe some of you folks have some connection with that, it's kind of important if you write a bit in to get a bit out. But the thing that I really want to get you started with as we talk about this is I want to explain that reliability, all these things that go into reliability, has to be measured from the customer's perspective, not from the component perspective, right? So when we're asking, is such a thing reliable, we have to be thinking from the customer's perspective, not from the component's perspective. And in order to make sure that this works, I'm going to give you all a little bit of a quiz. Be prepared to answer the following question. I'm going to set up a little scenario for you. You tell me what you think. Now, I don't know what you do for a living, but I'm here to tell you that the thing that you should consider switching to is selling tote bags with clouds on them, because cloud is really big, right? So Let's assume you switch to that, and in order to do that, you set up an entire server farm to serve it, and let's say that you have 100 servers. And in case you're curious, yes, this is 100 things, and in case you're curious, doing it on PowerPoint is a big pain in the, well, anyway. But I'm sparing no expense for you. Now, imagine something happens in the data center. Either there's a power outage in a rack, or maybe somebody has released a new version of software that they shouldn't, and 14 of these machines, metaphorically or for real, burst into flame. Okay? Everybody got it? Everybody got the scenario? Yes? Good? Okay, great. Here comes the quiz. I'm sorry, that's my inflame thing. Here comes the quiz. I'm gonna ask you, A, B, or C, what the answer to this question is. This situation, is it A, not a big deal. If I'm on the beach, I can ask for another fruity drink and a coconut with like a paper umbrella. It'll be fine. And when I feel like it, I'll come off the beach and I'll go deal with it. Is the problem B, I should go to my desk right now and start working on it? That seems like a reasonable thing. Or is it an existential crisis? And if it's 2 a.m. in the morning and I have to, I'm gonna scramble everybody, including the people with C in their title. Okay? I'd like to vote, please, and then I'll tell you my answer. How many people think it's A? Okay. How many people think it's B? A far larger amount. How many people think it's C? A couple, okay. Well, my answer is, oh, sorry, I know the answer. Sorry, the answer is here. The answer is, if you can't see it, it depends, right? Because if none of your customers notice, if nobody notices that there was a problem, maybe it's A, maybe you're fine, right? If you're, and thank you sound people for making sure the mic stayed. I just want to thank you, that was a good move. Maybe if things are slower, that's a problem, maybe it's B. And maybe, just maybe, if in fact your main revenue stream is down, well, I'm here to tell you that it could be C, it could be an existential crisis. So that's what I mean by it depends, and that's what I mean by this question must be carefully constructed. And one of the things that you will see about all these questions is that maybe by just inserting a word or two into the question itself, I'm gonna change how you think about that question and change what you're asking. Cool, okay, great. So that was number one. Let's do number two. How do I get rid of all of my failures or errors that we want to talk about in whatever that is? Okay, so let's talk about that. In order to get there, I need to first take you into the depths of the SRE mindset. Just for yucks, how many people here have SRE in their title or reliability in their title? Doesn't count for the person who's got reliability in their company name. Boom, smaller number, great. Perfect set of people here. So the SRE mindset, I think, can be encapsulated in two questions, right? How does a system work and how does a system fail? Right? That's what we're keenly interested in at all times. And to be very clear about it, the second question lives to service the first, right? We're asking, when we look at failures, we're doing it because we want to really understand how does a system work? Because quite frankly, the SRE mindset starts with curiosity. That's what we're all about. And if I'm going to make you switch from being a Swede to an SRE in this talk, welcome aboard. But I want you to understand that it's all about curiosity. So if I go back to these questions, I want to say that these questions are a little more sophisticated than you might think, because I'm asking, how does a system work in real life, in production, right? I'm not asking you, how does it work on your whiteboard? That's awesome, but that's not the same thing. I'm asking you questions like, what happened, how does a system work when I scale it? I'm asking you questions about, how does it work for the customers, right? That's another important thing. What happens if I have less operational load, right? We'll talk about toil later. What if I want to, how does the system work for more people, might be a question I ask. Like, could I do something to increase the accessibility of that service, right? How can I make it go faster? How can I make it better? So, and the other question is, when does a system stop working, right? Every system that you build is going to come to the end of its useful runway. You want to see it before you get there, just like you want the plane to be up at that point in the runway, right? And so thinking about how systems work and how it fails is really important as part of this. The other thing that I would say that helps define the SRE mindset that might be useful to you is that we have very specific relationships to people and to errors and failure, which is the actual question we're asking. Now, to people, it's pretty obvious. SRE and reliability work is critically collaborative. right? It is not possible to do any of this work by yourself, right? If you're not talking to the people that own the system, if you're not talking to the people that write the system, the people here who write the system, then people are doing not SRE work because they're just making stuff up for themselves. The other thing that I think is actually a little more fun to talk about is to come back to this question, right, that we were talking about a moment ago, which is, how do I get rid of all my failures and errors in? And so the relationship to errors and failure is really super interesting. I first really grasped that idea when I was hanging out at a conference, not this one, but also a good conference. And I was sitting with a friend and somebody came along we had never met, he and I, and they sat down at our table and we started talking as one does at these conferences. I at least hope you do, definitely the right thing to do. And he was saying, oh, well, I just finished building out a whole new CI/CD system for my team. We're feeling really good about it. We've done a lot of good work to eliminate all the errors so nothing bad gets through to production. And we're like, oh, that's interesting. And we talked for a little while. He went off in his way. And then my friend who was sitting there, ex-Googler for the Googlers in the room, looked down at his coffee and said, if I was building that, I probably would let some of the errors go through because I'd want to know what was going on. And so the thing that I understood for SREs and for reliability work that was really important, and it took me quite some time to figure this out. And when I went back to John, that's his name, and said, do you remember this talk? He's like, what are you talking about? I have no memory of this at all, but it was really striking to me. I came to understand that we don't view failures or errors as the adversary, that we must completely stomp out. We're looking at it as signal, right? And in some ways, it goes back to that question that we talked about a moment ago, right? How does a system work? How does it fail? That's why we're paying attention to these things, right? Because it's telling us something about the system we probably didn't know before, thanks to its failures. Okay, congratulations. That was the second question. Okay, are you ready for number 3? Yes, no, maybe? Just checking we're still here and that the carbohydrates have not done their dirty work for you right now because everyone's tired. Okay. I wish your permission to start ranting. This is one of 2 rants in this talk. Yes? Everybody cool with ranting? Yes? Good with that? Good. Okay. We're going to talk a little about this term root cause and this question, what is the root cause of some outage, right? And this is the gateway to the part about learning from failure. This is the gateway that gets us to talk about that. And so I'm going to take apart that term root cause and I'm going to split it into pieces and it will lie bleeding at my feet by the time I'm done. Probably that's a little too graphic. But anyway, what I want you to understand here is that, well, I'll tell you what. Let me give you a scenario that's emerging. I'm going to have to read this scenario because it's got a lot of detail. And we're going to go through this as we go. Okay, so imagine that Pat is walking into the data center and trips over a power cable. Oscar left the cable on the floor while racking and testing a new server. The cable unplugs and the server loses power. Everybody following so far? Good, good, okay. When the server loses power, the database server instance provisioned to run on that server by the automation or orchestration or whatever it is that Susan set up, okay? This database server held an important shard of the data that the application that they use was run, and the sharding was configured by Yasmin, all that sharding stuff. Yeah, Yasmin, okay? The backend for the application, written by Niraj, slowly starts to lock up as threads busy wait trying to reach the data they need to continue processing. The response time of Sarah's front end for the application, oops, too far ahead, from Sarah's front end for the application begins to get slower and slower as the connections to the back end hang and then time out. The monitoring system set up by Liz, and if anybody's here from Honeycomb, you know that reference, the monitoring system notices this thing, notices the problem, and sends out an alert to all the people of the team. But that alert, for some reason, is delayed for everybody reaching them. Okay, finally, the load balancer, configured by Sam, just starts handing out error 500s like candy, right? And a customer who is trying to purchase a widget on the website gives up in frustration and purchases it from a competitor. Oh, there's Sam. And Sarah's there. Good. Okay, my question for you is, who is responsible? Who's responsible for that loss of a sale? Go ahead, please. Can you just say a little louder? I'm more deaf than you think I am. Oh yeah, thank you for the mic. I really appreciate it. Go for it, sir.
If the servers were running on wireless electricity, this wouldn't have happened.
Oh. So you're saying it's really a law of physics thing. I hadn't thought of that. That's really interesting. Cool. Anybody else want to take another whack at this? Who's responsible for the loss of the sale? Please raise your hand. Wait, all of them?
All of them.
All of them? Every one of them? Fire them?
No, don't fire them, but all of them are responsible.
They are?
Yeah.
Really? Anybody else agree with that or disagree? Anybody disagree with that? It's all of them who are responsible for this problem? Do you disagree? Go ahead. It's no one's fault. Wait, he says it's all, you say it's no one's fault. This is hard to reconcile, my friend. Right? So the thing to understand here is I'm just taking this apart by showing you that in these situations, it's safe to say the system, right? It is the collection of all the people, and it's the collection of none of the people. It's a collection of what they chose to do. It's a collection of what they didn't choose to. And just understand, when we're talking about failures these days, we're really talking about things that aren't that simple as a single problem or a single root cause. And now, oh, sorry. I guess I had that cool zoom in that I forgot about. Okay, so that's what I want to ask you. Like, what's the deal with the root cause at that? Now, let me continue to take this apart. I was thrilled in the keynote today that this particular reference was mentioned. This is a lovely paper you should go read, which is why I stuck a QR code. There's a few of them with QR codes. If you haven't read Dr. Richard Cook, and I miss him, he's a really good guy, talk about how complex systems fail. Go read it now. It's worth it's like 4 pages at tops, and it's really worthwhile. Okay? So what you'll start to understand is in this world of complex systems, talking about root causes doesn't really work anymore, right? That there's a single thing. It's not like you're looking for some causal chain, like Colonel Mustard killed Clarence in the kitchen with a candlestick, right? We no longer have that sort of causal chain. And so looking for that is not going to get you where you want to go. So what do you say instead? These days, more often people say that there's some sort of, often they identify maybe a trigger, maybe not. Maybe you get lucky, you can find a trigger. But at the very least, you would probably talk about contributing factors. And so I think it's really important when you start to talk about this, because when you start to do this thing that we all know we should be doing when something fails, right, is to have some sort of post-incident review where we get in a room and we try to learn from it, right, and we try to document it, that we're going to want to talk in this language. Now, I'm the child of a sociologist, and that meant that when I was 4 or 5 years old driving with my father in the car, he was talking about how language constructs reality, which was pretty heavy for me at the time, but it stuck with me. I'm really happy, and I believe that. So if we talk about a contributing factor that's trying to drive people towards a single causal chain, and I'm here to tell you it's far easier to look at this. Now, do people still say root cause analysis? Do people from Microsoft still say root cause analysis? Oh, yes, we do. Do I spend all my time trying to stamp that out? Yes, I do. Do I succeed? No, I don't. Thank you for asking those questions. But I think it's just important as you think about this, as you look at this, to realize that. Now, as a bonus, since I said there were only 7 questions, I'm going to give you an extra 5 questions. How many people here have heard the 5 whys? Oh, I'm so sorry. Because I am here to tell you that the 5 whys are terrible. Now, here's why, and I'm going to show you just how terrible they are, and I'm going to need your help. Your job, when I point to you, is to say why. Okay, and I know you're going to feel like a 4-year-old or a 3-year-old, right? Why is the sun, like whatever. Okay, but that's the idea. Okay, ready? Here we go. Okay, the system was down. Why? Because the server stopped running. Why? Because the disk filled up. Why? Because a log file got too big. Why? Because the log file trimmer stopped running. Because it got left out of a config file. Aha! No, I didn't say anything. What? You guys can stop, it's okay. Okay, so the root, so I go, aha! The root cause is that the log trimmer got left out of a config file. Let's make sure we have the log trimmer in all of our config files. Now we're good, right? What just happened in that process when we were going through that? When you experience that, what are we left with, right? The conclusion I came to is true. You can't disagree with that, probably. I mean, you could, but you probably won't. And go ahead, but do it in your own time. But what just happened in that process? Well, we were just taking the 5 whys. Anyone? Hands up, please, if you would, please. Sorry, you got to talk into a mic because I'm like I said, my hearing is not the best.
You could have mitigated that at many different levels, but you only addressed the very last step.
Yeah. You're getting exactly right. So the problem with the 5 whys is you shed all this really super interesting, super useful, and perhaps really relevant information. No, I'm not saying you shouldn't look at a situation and try to go deeper into it. And maybe you ask why, though I think you should be asking another question instead, which we'll get to in a moment. But just understand the 5 whys are terrible because they do that sort of shedding of information. There's lots of questions like, okay, was somebody on vacation? Like, does somebody know how to set this up? There's lots of questions. Was the doc wrong? Right? None of that came into this conversation. And wouldn't you like to know if your documentation is wrong? But you shedded that, right? As part of that, like, 3-year-old attempt to get an answer to a question as to why the sky is blue, right? So I think that it's really important to understand that those whys are terrible, and those are not questions we're going to talk about in this, but those are terrible questions. Okay. How many people in this room get a chance to do post-incident reviews, or maybe you call it a post-mortem just in case you work at a mortuary, or, or a retrospective as long as you don't mind fighting with the agile people? Yeah, okay, great. All of you seem to do, a vast majority of it, right? This is why I don't use retrospective, because the agile people have sharp sticks and they're going to use them. Sorry, am I insulting other people? I don't know. We're at a software conference, so I probably shouldn't do it. So I want to give you 4 traps that you will fall into, I guarantee you, and you will now notice them as we do this when you're doing post-incident reviews. I'm going to call them post-incident reviews. I'll call them whatever you want. That might help you, because if you spot them, you could then take care of them. So the first one, perhaps my favorite, and usually people start moaning at this point, is attributing something to human error, right? People often say, oh yeah, well, that was a human error. That's right. And the thing I want you to understand is that you could say that, but that's not super useful, because why did the human make that mistake? What was wrong with the process? What was wrong with the context they had? What documentation did they have? What did the tool not do, right? When you say human error, you stop the investigation right at the point where it gets interesting, right? Right where you can learn from it. And if you stop that investigation, what do you get? Like a bunch of check marks on a spreadsheet that says human error, human error, human error, right? Like you're never going to learn anything. So that's one of the things that you will see happen, right? And this also leads to blame and other stuff like that, right? So it's just not the best of ideas. Okay, let's talk about this one. Counterfactual reasoning, right? So counterfactual reasoning is when you try to tell the story of something that didn't happen to try to explain something that did. The operator should have done this. They ought to have done that, right? When you say, that person should have instead failed over to the other region, and they didn't, right? And the weird thing about this is instead of investigating what went on at the moment, you're making up this cute little story that didn't happen in the hopes that you can maybe get some information about what really did happen. And so that's why counterfactual reasoning is a problem. Okay. Normative languages. Normative languages are often ought to, should have, right? You see adverbs, should have, could have, would have, failed to, etc. And again, the problem with this is assuming when you say ought to, that the person ought to do that. This is assuming exactly the thing that the person making the decision didn't have at the time, which is what was going to be the result of their decision. Right? You're somehow judging them by something they didn't have, which is knowledge of what would have happened, right? And that's not super useful. It's far more easily to try to figure out what they did know than to try to blame them for oh, well, if they didn't do that, it wouldn't be a problem. And one more, mechanistic reasoning, which happens all the time. Did I say, let me see. How many people of you run production systems? Let me see if this is gonna work. Okay, fewer than it would be used for this. So I'll tell you what I usually do with this. Mechanistic reasoning is what a former colleague of mine called, I would have got away with it if it wasn't for those meddling kids, right? And what that means is the system would have worked perfectly if it weren't for those darn humans screwing it up by changing things, right? And the problem with that, in addition to the Scooby-Doo reference, the problem with that is that makes this assumption that the way that the machines keep on going is strictly, it would just keep on going if there weren't humans involved. But everybody in this room knows that often the thing that keeps the thing running is that or gets things back to running is the human in the system. And so it's denying the human's role and it's blaming the human in the system instead of saying, oh, I see, the humans are the things that are providing some of the adaptive capacity here. And so it's really useful to understand that when we say the computers are perfect and the humans are terrible, right, that's not the story. It's not the real story how this goes. Okay. Oh, and just to mess with you a little bit more. Okay, root causes. Great. The day before your system went down and you had that outage, what's the root cause of it running, of it succeeding? What's the root cause of its success? The fact that it was running before the day before, right? It was running fine. Like we can all agree that's probably true. Or the 10 minutes before, I don't know how often your things go down, but right? Like 10 minutes before it went out. What was the root cause of it running? Anybody? Right? There's no, okay, go ahead. Yeah. Say again? Well, it's plugged in, that doesn't hurt, I agree, but you should talk to this gentleman over here. He's got some real interesting ideas. Yeah, I just want you to kind of understand here, and in fact, thinking a little bit about that idea about what was it that made it so that the system would keep running? What is it that makes it so that the problem wasn't worse? All those things, what are the things that you could do to support it so it doesn't get to those outage? Instead of spending your time thinking about that half an hour it was down, what about speaking about all the time outside that? And so this is the other reason why root cause falls down, because there's not necessarily a root cause of success, right? There might be contributing factors to your success, and I totally agree you should look at those and you should really strengthen those. And that's kind of part of some of the work that's been done, especially in the resilience engineering and the safety areas. Nancy Levinson is another name that comes up a lot. She did some really great stuff about safety 2 and safety 3, that she's trying to say, oh, well, what if we paid attention not to just the outage? Okay, that's 3. Oh, yeah, so let's do number 4. What role should SRE, or you may substitute if you like reliability work, take in your org, right? What role should it be? So I'm going to give you a model. It's not meant to be a maturity model if you've encountered things like that. It's just meant to be some possible ways that you can think of the model of the people doing reliability in your place. The first one that almost invariably people start with is firefighting, right? You spend all your time fighting the fire to get the thing up, to get it to be fixed, to do it on a repeated basis, and that's a really important role. I'm not denigrating any of these roles, super important. This is what you're gonna do for sure for first, but then you can start to move on. And the tricky thing is often what people do is they move on to gatekeeping. And the problem, right, because what happens is you're like, okay, I just spent the last year and a half of my time trying to put out fires, getting things to work again. I spent all this time, I spent time in the data center during Father's Day, true story, unfortunately. And now I just want to prevent the Visigoths at the gate from ruining my perfect production system. I've just spent all this time doing that, right? And so they become gatekeepers. But I'm here to tell you that's a very bad place to be in your org because nobody really loves gatekeepers, right? I mean, you know, because you've met them, right? And you've been them, right? Probably, right? So some people think it would be far better for you to skip over this and to figure out what you can do to help people get to where they want to go. But, you know, just like I step off a plane, I'm not super thrilled to see the customs person, right, whose job it is to make sure that everything's cool passing in. I do, and I'm fine, and it's okay, and I don't smuggle drugs very often. Sorry, wait, this is terrible. I don't know. I just realized this is a bad time to talk like this. Anyway, the next thing you might find yourself doing is being an advocate, right? In which you're being part of more of the stages of the life cycle, right? You're an advocate for reliability. You're trying to help empower people from that, right? And you're going around being more part of the process in an attempt to get reliability to be more part of it. We seem to have no problem saying, oh, well, let's pay attention to this from a security perspective. It's not always that easy to get people to be part of it from a reliability perspective. Right? And in some ways, this then leads to the idea of being a partner, right? Where now you're maybe, if you get lucky, part of being part of the roadmap planning, right? If people can agree that reliability is as much of an important feature as anything else, then maybe you're part of the roadmap. And then finally, and this is the one I would like you to feel free to disagree with me with, but probably later, is engineer is the way Ben Ferguson talks about it, right? Like somehow we all merge and like everybody does reliability and everything is everything, you know, like everybody's doing this. It's a little tricky. It doesn't mean that you stop doing reliability work. You may still be focused on that, but there's some notion that like now we've mind melded, you know, with the rest of the org in a proper way. Now, does this often happen? Not in my experience. And when it does happen, it's not all that stable because it's very easy to get knocked to another place. And the thing I just want to say about this is this is not a set of stages. Just like Kubler-Ross had stages of grief, right? I don't know how you know that reference. She spent a lot of her time towards the end of her career trying to remind people that her stages of grief were not a finite state machine where you went from one to the next one to the other one to the next one to the next one. I mean, maybe all that jazz, the movie didn't help any, but you know what I'm saying? Like where there's some notion that you move from thing to thing. And so I just want to mess with you by moving these around a little bit to be clear that it doesn't matter what order and you may be going back and forth and it may be that you wake up someday, and this is just gonna keep people freaked out, so let me put it back that way. But you may wake up one day and look in the mirror and like, oh my God, I'm the gatekeeper now, even though I've been like, you know, whatever. Or you might wake up and say, oh, there's fires to be had. There's always fires to be had. So that's that. Okay, number 4. Number 5, how do I sell SRE or reliability work internally? Okay, and this sounds like it, because I get this all the time. It's like, okay, I want to build this group. I'm part of this group. I have to convince other people to do things. How do we do that? Well, I could just stop and say don't, because you should. But there's a lot of don'ts to this. And I want to take it from the negative here. I want to do that thing where you take that block of marble and you just chip away all the things that aren't David, and congratulations, you get the statue. It's not exactly that easy. Okay, the first thing I want to say is when people try to talk about reliability work, they often do it as like an insurance salesman, like, nice system you have here. It would be an awful shame if something happened to it. In fact, how much do you think we would pay if you had a downtime? Right? Like that's not an uncommon way to sell this sort of thing, right? Because people think, oh, I'll just say like, hey, I'll save you the cost of outages. But the problem with that is that's like trying to quantify something that hasn't happened yet and to sell something based on something where you don't have any real data on. I mean, maybe you've had outages, but it's not all that great as a way of doing this. I also want to say when we're talking about this, when you start to talk about this work and you're talking to an engineering leader, including the ones in this room, they will start to nod and be like, oh yeah, I want that. Oh yeah, that's great. And it gets really, really tempting to sell, because they want to hear like, you mean I just have to put a dime in the machine, you know, once every 6 months and I get reliability out and I can do everything I want and there'll never be a problem and everything will be great, right? And because we're people pleasers, at least I'm a people pleaser, I'm like, oh yeah, you'll get that. And you don't want to do that. You shouldn't let your mouth write a check that your tail can't cash, to quote some of the old bluesmans, right? It's really important to understand that people will want that fantasy, and don't be trying to sell that to them. It's very also seldom to have this situation where congratulations, reliability is now a tax. It's okay, we're just a cost center where, you know, we're going to charge you 20% of your time and hopefully things will be better for you. Just give me 20% of your budget, right? It's a bad tax to have, right? It shouldn't be considered that way, like an onerous thing that you have to pay. Security a tax. I'm sure there's other things like that. Compliance is a tax, you know, that sort of thing. I want to suggest, and this is really important from experience, that you cannot claim, and I'm not saying you would, but you cannot claim that this effort will be painless or invisible. Right? When somebody goes in to do an SRE engagement, they need to understand that congratulations, I might make you do something different than you're doing now. You will notice that, or maybe you don't have access to that now, or maybe we're gonna have a different set of procedures that we know works because we spend all our time doing this, but it's not gonna be painless, right? You might have to build something into your app so that it's actually emitting data. What a crazy idea, right? And it's not going to be painless, and you can't really suggest that it is. And the other thing that we do a lot, which you're going to see some of the conference, is we try to talk to everybody in SLI, SLO language. You walk up to anybody you're talking to, whether they're business people, whether what, and you talk in SLIs and SLOs, and they're just going to go, cool acronym, right? If you're talking to business people, they're going to want to talk to you about customer acquisition or customer retention, or maybe they're going to want to talk about sales or whatever, right? You want to speak in their language when you're trying to sell and talk about reliability that way. So far, so good? Okay. Number 6, I should look at my watch. Cool, we're doing great. Okay, how do we automate away toil? So I want to show you, or I want to start with the SRE definition of toil, because when we talk about toil, we're not talking about the colloquial way of toil, which means things I don't like doing, right, that I have to do that I don't like taking the garbage out or whatever. We're talking with a specific definition that I'm pulling out of the SRE books by Vivek Rao. It has 2 chapters in the SRE book, in the SRE workbook. And I thought, like, wouldn't it be cool if I made this into a bingo card and I forced everybody to play bingo? And it turns out not to look so great, but there it is. And just in case you're concerned, I can do a bingo card if I really want to, but I didn't. Okay. Now, let's talk about what it means for toil. So, you probably know these things. Anything that's manual, anything that's probably repetitive. I mean, it doesn't have to be all these things, but the more it's like these things, the more likely it's toil. Is it automatable? Is it tactical? And the one that I like the best, which I would walk over there and point at if somebody wants to do that for me, is no enduring value. Those things that we do over and over again and the system doesn't get better, the reliability doesn't get better, we just have to do them. And the more we have of those, it's not great. And then Vivek Rao uses computer science language. I will translate. He says O of n with service growth. What he means is that it scales sublinearly, which I realize also sounds like CS talk. Let me say that a different way. If in fact, in order for me to run the system, I have to spend an hour to create 10 accounts, we'll just say that. And then I get 100 people. Well, 10x, right? And then I have 1,000 people, then 10x that, right? So just understand there is that what we're really searching for is to making sure that we can do this without having to bring in that resources like that. So this is the backdrop to what I want to talk about. That is the bingo card that I don't want to talk about. Gotcha, it made that little doop sound. Okay, so here's what I want to do to get you to think about toil in a little more slightly sophisticated way. And the way I'm doing that is by using cool bolding to say, do we actually automate away toil? And I want you to think a little bit about this. So here's my question for you. Okay, I have a problem with my system. And once every couple of days, it decides to lock up. I have a person, that person reboots the server when that happens. Okay, everybody think that's toil, right? Not sound great? Now, cool, I get something that reboots the server for me automatically. Have I eliminated the toil? Raise your hand if you think I have. It's not a trick question, I'm really asking, go ahead. Yep, 2 of you think I have. How many of you think I have not eliminated the toil? Why do you think that? Somebody want to raise their hand? Mike there? Because I haven't eliminated the root cause. See, now, this is the problem. Anyway, we'll just leave. Usually I have somebody in with me when I'm giving talks to pull you out forcefully and throw you out of the room, but that person is not available today, so you get to stay. But you're getting warm. Do you want to try that again, just so we become friends? Go ahead. Sorry, here comes a mic, I'm sorry to say. Go ahead.
Yeah, in our organization, we have a similar issue, but I think that we don't spend time enough to understand the problem and resolve it, and rather we put a Band-Aid.
Yeah. So you might have eliminated the toil in this situation, but do you feel good about it? Does anybody feel good about the fact that there's something automatically rebooting your servers? And so what if you have a memory leak? Everybody's cool, it's fine, right? You don't feel good about it. So I just want to say that toil elimination isn't super easy. Are outages toil? Let's do a hand raise. How many people think outage is toil? By the definitions that we use, right? I gave you definitions, right? So we all have definitions. Go ahead. Raise your hand if you think outages are toil. I can't see it. You can't do this. This doesn't count. Come on. Stand by your opinions. Stand by your opinions firmly. How many people here think outages are not toil? Oh, it's really interesting you think that. Why do you think they're not toil? Raise your hand so I can hear that.
They might not be repetitive.
Go ahead.
They might not be repetitive. They might be.
They may not be. Mouth, mic, meet them.
Okay, I'm really bad with this kind of stuff. They might not be repetitive. Like they can be for unseen conditions or.
I love a smart audience so much. Yeah, the question is, are all outages toil? Don't know. are novel outages where I've learned something new from it toil? I don't know. I'd be really hard pressed to call that toil. Now, do I want a lot of novel outages? Well, if I have to choose between whether they're novel or not, yes. But if I want fewer outages, not necessarily. So it's just really interesting to think about this. And I want to say that there's also a difference when it comes to toil between when you have a new service that you're just standing up and you have an established service, right? Because new services invariably are going to be more noisy. You haven't tuned the monitoring. You haven't done anything with that. So just understanding that toil and its relationship to services sometimes has to do with when you're measuring it, right? I would expect a new thing to cause a lot more intensive work to have to be done. Okay, and I just want to say, this is stuff we were talking about. There is a hit on complexity. You may be, if you're going to put automation in place, maybe you're going to be trading your toil for complexity. Congratulations. Now I have a really complex automated thing that is trying to just keep it up and doing the right thing. Congratulations, right? And so I'm just, I have this theory that I argue with a friend about, that there's like this conservation of toil, right? Where you never destroy toil. You just either move it around or you turn it into complexity. I don't know if it's true. I'd love to discuss it with you, and you can have the same argument I have with him, and just see what you think about that. But I think you want to understand that there's sort of a complexity add-on here. And then finally, just to be a little something, whose toil are we talking about? That's the thing we never ask. My toil? Your toil? Our customer's toil? Pay attention to that. That's kind of important to realize when we're talking about this. Like somehow we're just like, oh, well, it's toil. And that means that like it's our toil. Now, I want to also say that I dig Ironies of Automation by Lisanne Bainbridge as a thing. If you haven't read it, I've got this here just so you can get to it fast, right? This is the thing that was talked about in the keynote. It's a really other good thing, which talks about some of the issues around automation. The way I like to think about the issues around automation, one of them is, how many people here has seen the movie Fantasia made by Disney? Yes? Yes? Okay, some number of you, the rest of you need to either like go see it or find a kid and force them to make you go see it or whatever, right? There's a scene in it, the Sorcerer's Apprentice scene, right? And I don't want to give anything away for it because not everybody has seen it. But the Sorcerer's Apprentice scene also, to my mind, is a really good metaphor for what happens when you automate things. Just gonna leave it there. And if you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. And if you haven't seen the movie, guess what you're gonna do? Okay? Okay. So now let's go to my last question here. And this is my last rant of the day. Oh, I'm sorry. I'll put this all up without the gray. Don't worry. Unless you want me to come up and do a selfie, I can do that also. Okay, just check. Appreciate that. Okay, this is another rant. I need permission to rant at you. Is that cool? Yeah? Groovy. Okay, cool. I don't really mean rants, right? I'm a nice guy. I just hope you understand that. And it's really important that consent is given. Okay, is my something resilient? And I want to just apologize. From this point on, it's like I'm going to give you a little bit of perfect pitch, right? People with perfect pitch report that it's not so fun to go out to see performances because they hear when the piano is out of tune, right? I'm now going to let you hear when the piano is out of tune. I apologize. I apologize. You didn't know you were in for this, but you said I could rant, so there it is. Okay? Here's what I want to say. When someone asks, is my something resilient? I think you probably meant, in most of your cases, in fact, almost all of them, fault tolerant. Or maybe you meant redundant. Or maybe you meant preventively designed, which I don't know if that's a thing. And maybe you meant highly available, right? You didn't really mean resilient, and I'll tell you why you didn't mean resilient, right? Or self-healing. I'm sorry, I have one more that's on this list, right? But when people say, oh, let's make our apps resilient. No. That's not what they're talking. I mean, most of the time, that's not what they're talking about. And the thing to understand is that resilient means, especially in the resilience engineering community, a lot more, right, than just these things, right? And I have lost the battle in my employer. You will probably lose the battle in your employer to stop calling it resilient when we really just mean fault tolerant. Like, cool, we have resilient cloud architecture. Like, no, it's fault tolerant. The reason why is that resilience can mean a number of things. And there's a lovely paper that I will point you out in a moment again. It can mean lots of things. It can mean, and this is what when people think it means fault tolerance, we mean that. Rebounds is like, rebounds from disruptive, I'm just using his wording here. Rebounds from disruptive or traumatic events and returns to previous or normal activities, right? Okay, right, that's what that's why they're subbing it in, right? Because that's like the first level, but that's not really where we want to go here. So robustness means, and I'm using David, this is from a lovely summarization of a paper by David Woods, and I'm going to point you at the paper itself. But robustness means is able to manage increasing complexity, stressors, and challenge, right? Like the software is able to handle increasing problems, right? That's what robust means. It doesn't mean that I have another one of them and I turn the other one on. It means I can handle that situation. Graceful extensibility means extends the performance or brings extra adaptive capacity to bear when surprise events challenge its boundaries, right? It knows what to do in those situations. And sustained adaptability is the ability to adapt to future surprises as conditions continue to evolve. So I'm here to tell you that very few times are we talking about adaptive capacity. But that to me is what I think of when I think of resilience, right? That ability to handle surprises, that ability to handle situations when you didn't know it. Just restarting the server, that is not resilient, right? Okay. Maybe it's fault tolerant, maybe it's not. Okay, and anyway, if you want to see a lovely paper called Resilience is a Verb, I highly recommend it by Dr. David Woods. There it is. Another thing, this is the time to take out your phone if you want it. If you haven't checked it, you can go do it. And I just want to let you know, these don't like send you to some malware site. So I put the URL there. If you want to type it yourself, you can be as paranoid as you want. I'm totally cool about that. So, okay, great. Okay, here are the questions I asked, right? Just to walk you through a number of things. I want to give you the opportunity to ask me questions, though we might actually not have a ton of time. We might have a couple of minutes to do that. Before I do that, I figured I should answer one question you have is like, what's with the stickers I gave out? If you came here early enough, you get stickers. When I went to Amazon, they provided 2 answers. This looks super real that you can put it on. You can put it on that. And my favorite thing that Amazon said is you could use it on books, hat, photo, or cup. And it can be pasted on many things. So in case you're curious what to do with those stickers, now you know. Congratulations. Okay, just to let you know, this looks so not photoshopped at all, not photoshopped. Okay, I will take, I think, a single question. Is that cool in terms of timing? Mrs. Time Clock? Ms. Time Clock? One question, 1 or 2 questions. Well, 1 long question, 2 short questions. I'm gonna go to the back first and then you'll be next, sir. Okay, somebody is running your way with a microphone, don't let them trip, because then you're gonna get like a microphone in the teeth and you won't like it.
All right. There we go. So regarding customer-driven metrics, when you're talking about your first point, do you caution against proxy metrics?
Do I caution against proxy metrics? I think if you get a choice, I would say that it's far better to measure the thing you want to measure than the thing that's trying to measure the thing that you're trying to measure, is the way I would put it. Do you know what I mean? Like that's the thing. Like I think the closer you can get to the customer, the better. But not always can you do that. Sometimes you have to fake it, right? And you know it's a proxy. Just go into it knowing that you're using a proxy, right? And I think that's fine. I'm not here to judge you. I can judge you after the talk because I don't have enough time to judge you. But come to the front of the stage and I'll judge you then. But it'll be totally cool. Thank you for asking. We have one more question here and then I think we're done. But you have to run all the way over this direction. So
when you say adaptability, you mean like the system knows, for example, if I have Black Friday or something like that, right? When you have a surge of inputs in your system or something like that, what you mean by adaptability is that you don't need to do anything to the system and it can react to this kind of events, something like that?
It can react to surprises. Let me give you the example that John Allspaw gives. My job is to drive something around in my car. Maybe I'm an Uber driver or something like that, or maybe I'm a delivery person, right? If I have a spare tire in my trunk, which I do, kind of, I don't know if I have it in the car. If I have a spare tire, that's not resilience, that's fault tolerance, right? That's high availability. Tire blows out, I'm cool. If I know how to call another driver, or if I understand how transportation works, or I understand how the bus system works, that's resilience. Does that make sense to you? Right? It's more than just having a replacement there. It's understanding how to cope with unforeseen situations at a higher level. That would be one way I would say it, if I were John. But I'm not going to be John anytime soon. I just want to thank you all for coming. It's been a super thrill speaking at this conference for the first time. Feel free to find me at any time during this conference or ping me any other way. Love talking about this stuff. You've been a terrific audience. Thanks.